this is part one of the lab, and it's entitled Weight Changes During Pregnancy. Now, I've just weighed these three animals here, and I've got their live weight. They're all around 40 kilograms. But when you take the live weight of an animal, you have to think about what might influence that weight. So they could have a full fleece versus recently shorn. The animal could be wet. The gut fill is another thing you have to take into account, how much food the animal's carrying around. All these things could influence the weight by quite a few kilograms. The other thing is pregnancy. If one of these animals was pregnant, then technically what you're weighing is the animal plus the conceptus, and the conceptus technically isn't her. You've got the fetus, you've got the fluids that the fetus is contained in, you've got the increased size of the uterus, and you've got the placenta. So in this lab we are going to work through a spreadsheet and actually put some numbers to the weight of that conceptus and how that increases over time. Because if you want your animals to stay in good condition through the pregnancy, then you need to increase the weight of the animal in line with the increasing weight of the conceptus. So we're going to work through a spreadsheet and put some real data to that weight increase associated with the pregnancy. So this is exercise 1, and this is going to give us some numbers to the weight changes during pregnancy. So the increase in the weight of the fetus and the fluids and the placenta and the uterus, as they increase as a proportion of the live weight of the animal. This is going to put some numbers to that. So this is all real data. It's from the Agricultural Research Centre in the UK. And this page here is just reproducing the information that you're given in the lab manual. So this chart is the scale here. So down the bottom we have weeks before birth. So the 0 here is birth, 2 weeks before, 4 weeks before, etc. And this is a percentage scale up the side. And these 4 lines represent 4 different components of the conceptus, and that's the uterus and its contents. So we have the fetus, the fluids, the uterus, and the placenta. And basically they're telling you what proportion of their final weight of each one of these components they are coming up to birth. So for instance, this point here is saying that at 12 weeks prior to birth, this is the fetus line, it, if you read off through here, weighs about 2% of its final weight. And here, 10 weeks prior to birth, it's now 9% or somewhere near there, 9% of its final weight. Up here, fluids, 12 weeks prior to parturition or birth, it's on the 30% line, so it weighs 30% of its final weight. You need to bear in mind that this goes to 12 weeks prior to birth, and the gestation period of a sheep is 21 weeks. So there's another 9 weeks here that aren't on this graph. And over here we have a little table that tells us the proportion of the total weight of the gravid uterus, so the total weight of that pregnant uterus, that each part is at birth. So the fetus is about 56% of the total weight, fluids 23%, the uterus 13%, and the placenta 8%. And all this data is for a animal producing a single lamb, and that single lamb is 4 kilograms. And I'll just put in here that gravid equals pregnant, parturition equals birth. So let's have a look at the exercise that we have to do. Okay, I've already filled this in, so I'll just get rid of this here and work through it and show you exactly how we get to these numbers. So, got a table here, the different components across the top, and here is the weeks prior to birth down the side. So the one piece of information that we know is that at birth the fetus weighs 4 kilograms, and we also know that that is 56% of the total weight of all the material associated with this pregnancy. So it means that this number here I can work out by just taking the 4 kilograms, dividing it by the dividing it by 0.56, and that tells me that the weight of all of the components comes to 7.1 kilograms. And I know the fluids is 23% of that, so in here I just need to put in equals 7.1 times 0.23 gives me the number for the fluids, so the weight of the fluids, and I can copy that across and it gives me the weight of the uterus and the placenta. So from here I just need to fill in the rest of the table, and to do this I'm going to have to refer back to the chart that's in the lab manual. So if this is 12 weeks prior to birth for the fetus, if I go back here, this is the fetus line. I already said before, 12 weeks prior to birth, the fetus is about 2% of its final weight. So in here I can put equals this final weight times 0.02. You can see the formulas I'm putting in up here if you're interested, as well as there. And that means it weighs 80 grams. And I'm going to copy that down just to speed things up. Now, 10 weeks prior to birth, I said before, it's at about 9%. So I change that 0.2 to 0.9. And I'm going to basically work through that and fill out, using those 4 lines, fill out all of this chart. So I'll just quickly do that and I'll come back to you. Okay, so I filled in the table. The whole point of this exercise is not really to teach you how to learn, teach you how to use Excel. It's about showing you how we arrive at these numbers. So I filled in the table, and that has automatically filled in this chart. And you can see from this that really there's only one line here that's rising dramatically in this last 12 weeks of the pregnancy, and that is the line for the fetus. So it's gone from 80 grams to 4 kilograms over the last 12 weeks. All of these other components here have stayed reasonably flat. So basically what it's saying is that the fetus grows dramatically in that last half of the pregnancy, whereas all of the other components have done most of their growth earlier on. So the fluids and the uterus and the placenta not increasing that dramatically in that last half of the pregnancy. So what else I can do is here in this column here I've just totaled up the weight of the fetus, fluids, uterus and placenta. So for each of those 2 week steps prior to the birth, and that means that I can fill in these last two columns here. So put pregnant ewe there and copy that down. So these two columns are saying if I keep the pregnant ewe at 50 kilograms, so every time I weigh her in those last 12 weeks, she weighs 50 kilograms, what's happening to her weight? Well, this line here, this column here, shows you what is happening to her weight. She basically goes from 48.5 kilograms down to 42, 43, and that's represented on this graph here. So this is the live weight of the animal. This is what's going to be happening to the mother, because a larger proportion of what you're weighing is not technically the mother, it's the products associated with the pregnancy. So you can switch these things around here. If I want to keep my mother in the same condition that she was at the start of these 12 weeks, I need to make her weigh 50 kilograms plus this column here. So I need to increase her weight in that sort of fashion. Every time I weigh her, she needs to be tracking along that line, and that will keep the condition of the mother, the weight of the mother, the same. And there's the point to this is that when after this point here, after the 0, so after here, she's going to have a lamb and she's going to be lactating and feeding that lamb. She can't physically eat enough food to meet the energy demands on her. So she will lose weight. And if she's already been losing weight coming up to that lactation, then she's going to be in very poor condition to deal with it. So ideally your animals need to increase weight coming up to the lambing, so that they've got the condition to be able to feed the lambs with the milk. So that's the take-home message for exercise 1. Now we'll move on to exercise 2.